welcome to day 2, Intimacy 30. 30 days to spiritual depth and intimacy with God. Here is the big picture. You can know God for yourself personally and intimately. Obviously, it's a growing knowledge, okay? But you can come to a place in your life where you say, I know whom I have believed, not just what I've believed in terms of doctrines and the teachings of our faith, but whom I've believed in terms of a personal depth of relationship with God. Yesterday we talked about the Father heart of God, and today we're going to look at this born for this. Now, you're asking, what are you born for? Who is born for this? You are born for intimacy. You were made for intimacy. Now, this is important. You see, you must always ask the producer, the manufacturer, why he made a thing. Can I tell you something? There are several reasons, several things a product can do, but you must find out why it is made. For example, I've got an iPad here. Now, there is a reason why it was made. I've got a pen here. There's a reason why a pen was made. Now, I can use the pen, and try to use it as a stabilizing, to stabilize paper when wind is blowing. I can use it to rule things out and all the rest. Why was it made? So that I can write with it. You have your phone, it's for communication. Can you do several things with your phone? Absolutely. I mean, many phones today are personal computers. You can calculate on your phone, you can check the weather, you can browse, surf the internet, and all the rest. But what is a phone that does not make phone calls? In essence, there is the chief essence, the chief reason for the creation of that thing. Have you ever asked yourself, what is the chief essence? What is the chief reason for your creation? Now, the Bible does not keep us in doubt, leave us in doubt for why we are created. I know there's several reasons we'll give. Well, we're created for this, we're created for that, we're created for this. But first, let's take a verse first and foremost, and then we study it in scriptures. In Revelation chapter 4, verse 11, it says, Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created. So all creation is for the pleasure of God. Now, you'll agree with me that how a thing gives God pleasure or gives the manufacturer pleasure is by fulfilling its purpose. Now, if the thing does not fulfill its purpose, its essence of creation, it's not going to give pleasure. So you ask yourself, why then was man created? Was he just created so that we can give birth and give birth and give birth and give birth and live to be 80, live to be 90, live to be 100, and then go through such a dark and depraved world and hope for hope on the other side? Not at all. The Genesis 1 creation story shows us a pattern. If you study through Genesis chapter 1, and for the sake of time, we won't be able to explore it all. If you study through Genesis chapter 1, you realize that every creation that God made was the previous creation before the next one, it usually was a requirement for the existence of the next one. So God did not create fish before he had dealt with water. God did not create sand or provide sand before create trees, before he had made sand available, the physical earth available. In essence, God, you see the plan and the order of God in creation. And so, in a sense, you can say that the sand and all of the rest was created to support the trees, the waters to support the fishes, the air and everything, the clouds and all the rest to support the birds that will fly there. Now, if you study through it, the Bible tells us that when God was going to create man, he said, let us make man in our image and our likeness. God spoke to the sand to produce trees. God spoke to the waters to produce fishes. God spoke to the firmament above to produce birds. But he spoke to himself to produce mankind. And so you begin to see that man was created from the very essence of God, and that the essence and the reason for his creation was to feel a need, as it were, in the heart of God. And what was that need? It was the need for fellowship. Every other creation was created, but they were not with the level of life and the level of sophistication that man was created. Man was created in the very class of God, which means that is the only creation of God that has the capacity to fellowship with God. And how do we know that that was a major deal with God, a big deal with God? Because the Bible tells us right after that that God will come from heaven into the Garden of Eden in the cool of the day to fellowship with mankind. Now that's very instructive. He didn't come to fellowship with the trees. He didn't come to fellowship with the birds. He didn't come to fellowship with the fishes. God will come in the cool of the day to fellowship with mankind. And so you see that Adam and Eve, they were created not just for the governance of the earth, not just for the administration of the earth. In fact, all of that were secondary purposes. And if they failed at the primary purpose, they were going to fail at every other secondary purpose. Put it in context. The moment they were driven out of the garden and fellowship was broken between God and man, man lost the governance, man lost the provision, he lost absolutely everything. So if you said man was created to govern the earth for God, you'd be right. But he could only govern the earth to the extent that he fellowshiped with God. If you said that man was created to do this and to do that, you'd be right. But he could only do it to the extent that he had fellowship with God. So, what was the primary essence and the primary reason for the creation of man? To fellowship with God, which means, irrespective of what we do, if we fail at fellowship and intimacy with God, we actually have failed at everything. If you study in Mark chapter 3, you see the exact same pattern with Jesus. When he chose his disciples, the Bible tells us that the first reason why he chose the disciples was that they might be with him. And then the second reason the Bible tells us is that they might preach. And then third reason is that he might give them power over sicknesses and diseases. But what's number one? They might be with him. You see, I realize that many believers, many Christians have no idea of how much God desires to fellowship with them. So much so that to feel that need, God literally created you, and that you are the only person, you are the only one in all of the universe, not angels. You're the only one who can meet that need of God, which is fellowship. Nobody else, nothing else that God created, not the angels, not the trees, not the stars. The only person that can meet that need is mankind, you and I. Let me read you something very important. You see, because when you understand this, then your approach begins to change. Your ideology concerning this thing begins to change. You realize that God is waiting for something from you that only you can give to him. And that's called fellowship. Man was created for fellowship with God. This is why man was created. God desires fellowship with you. And hear this, God as well, as it were. You see, because we're created in the very image and the likeness of God, which means whatever satisfies God is what will satisfy you. You are created in the very image and the very likeness of God. The oceans, the beauty of nature, and all of the rest did not satisfy God until he had a son, until he had a man that he could fellowship with. In the same way, nothing on earth will satisfy you except that you develop a relationship with God. I mean, you study through scriptures. You remember the Samaritan woman. Jesus was there at the well and she was there to fetch water. Jesus said to her after a lot of conversation back and forth, he said, if you knew the one that was asking you for water to drink, you will ask him for water. He'll give you water. You'll drink and you'll never thirst again. And she looked at me, what exactly do you mean when he said never thirst again? She knew that there was a depth to that statement. Who are you? What kind of a man are you? She knew there was something special about him. Then Jesus went prophetically and began to speak to her. He said, well, you've had several husbands, and the one that you have now is not even your husband. In essence, there's a thirst, there's a gap, there's a desire within your soul, and you're trying to use everything to fill that desire. Do you realize why people are so corrupt? It's because there's a gap in their soul. I mean, you wonder, haven't made all the money that you've made, stolen all the money that you've stolen. Why then do you want to steal more? I mean, if you lived on this alone, you'll never be a pauper. Your generations will never be a pauper. Why steal more? Why would somebody take drugs and all the rest that they know will damage them? Why would they do that? Why would people get into company that they shouldn't get into? Why do people do all of the things that they do? Because there is a void inside them. You see, because man was created to be the image of God, to be the, you look into a mirror and then you say, this is the reflection of the person, which means whatever you found with God and in God, you are going to find in man. If there was a desire for fellowship and that's what brings satisfaction to God, then there is always going to be a desire for fellowship, and that's the only thing that will bring satisfaction to you. Can I announce to you, no matter the cars that you drive, no matter the house that you live, there's a depth of fulfillment, there's a depth of satisfaction you will never know till you know God for yourself. You see, I was reading something by C.S. Lewis. And then he said this. He said, the happiness which God designs for his higher creatures, okay, and please don't mind the terms, but I mean, just listen to what he's saying, is the happiness of being freely, voluntarily united to him and to each other in an ecstasy of love and delight, compared with which the most rapturous love between a man and a woman on this earth is mere milk and water. Let me explain this to you. He's saying that there is a happiness, there's a liberty, there's a joy, there's a satisfaction, there's a fulfillment that you're going to have when a man becomes freely, voluntarily united with God, all right, in an ecstasy of love and delight. He said the closest comparison, which is not even a fitting comparison, is the rapturous love between a man and a woman that exists between a man and a woman, which means, the depth of love and fellowship that you find between a man and a woman. He said that's the closest we can use to describe it. That sense of fulfillment, that sense of satisfaction. God created it in you. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11. Solomon speaks to that fact. He says, listen, that God has put eternity in their hearts. What does it mean when he puts eternity? Which means there's a God-sized gap, God-sized hole in your heart that only God can fill. And until you start the journey to developing fellowship with him, you see, let me make a statement that I'm going to explain in the days to come. Being born again gives you a relationship with God, but it's your pursuit that gives you intimacy with God, which means there are many people that have a relationship with God, but there are many that do not have intimacy with God. There are many believers who can say, I know him. There are many believers who will claim to know him, but what they are spinning off verses and chapters of the Bible. The essence of the written word is to know the living word. That's the essence of the written word. Let me read you something else somebody said. And this was one of the early fathers, and they came to this conclusion. They said, man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. So, God desired fellowship. He created man. And then he put inside, it's like a socket, okay, and a plug, okay. For there to be a connection, what happens is that you create the exact same corresponding holes and gaps inside that socket. God, the plug, you, the socket, as it were. God, desirous of fellowship, desirous of intimacy. And I used the word yesterday, and I know how strong it is. Obsessively desirous of fellowship and intimacy with us. And then God creates the same gap, as it were, the same, he puts eternity in your heart, as it were, so that your heart begins to yearn and long for something. And many times people do not realize what you're yearning and longing for is not another relationship. There are people listening to me, and I'm saying this prophetically. You're suffering from addiction, approval addiction. You're always desirous of approval from this person, a nod from this, a nod from that, a yes from this, a like from this person, and a like from that person. Can I say this to you? That the only approval that will bring the biggest satisfaction and fulfillment with finality to your soul is the approval of God. You see, the energy and the strength, the effort that we're putting in to seek people, to connect with people, if we put in that effort to know God, you'd be shocked at how many people will be seeking to know you. I have found out that if you know him, men will seek to know you. I found out that if you know him and you come to a place of relationship, the Lord said this to me many years ago. He said, if you will stay with me in the secret place, he said, that which men are dying for and paying all the price to get, the doors they are trying to walk through, he said, I will bring them to you. Can I say what I said again? If you will stay with me in the secret place, you see, there is one knowledge that opens the door. It's the master key. It is the knowledge of God. Everything responds, everything adjusts to this knowledge. If you would give the effort, if you put in the effort, if you put in the labor, the sacrifice, you see, God has put the desire in your heart. It is now your job, now your responsibility to respond to that desire. There's hunger in you, there's desire in you. I know that's why you're watching. Something in you is calling for greatness. Something in you is saying there's more. Something in you is saying this can't be all. You've gone to church Monday to Friday. You've attended all the prayer altars, but something in you've received miracles. Yes, you've heard good word, but something in you is saying that there is more. And I'm telling you what that more is. It's the knowledge of God, intimacy with God. And guess what? Within this series, the Spirit of the Lord will encounter you in a very personal way as we learn the tools, the principles, of developing intimacy with God. It's my joy to have brought this to you. I'll be with you again tomorrow, same time on day 3 of Intimacy 30.